Terrarian in the Dungeon, Chapter 71, Fan Fiction, by Azazyel. Please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel for listening and patreon.com/Azazyel to read all of his stories. Making our way to the dungeon was a simple task with how quiet the streets of Orario was, with how the threat of Evilus hanging over people's heads was keeping them inside hiding at home. This reminds me of the dark days of Orario years ago. It's so quiet with how a weighty tension is hanging over the people. Filvis spoke softly as we walked along the roads, and I couldn't help but nod to her words, as it was completely different compared to what Orario was like when I first got here. I glanced at Belle and just thanked the heavens that her hair was much whiter and that she didn't have heterochromia eyes. If she did, she would have been a dead ringer for her Aunt Althea, and in the climate of Orario recently, that could have been a death sentence. Well, at least the line into the dungeon is the same, Belle spoke, trying to be cheerful, and I patted her on her shoulder in support as I led the two girls behind me into the dungeon so we could take the highway to the 18th floor. Once we got down to the floor of Riviera, I began to warn the girls about what we were going to face. Alright, we are going to start on the Eye of Cthulhu and then move on to the Eater of Worlds boss to get the new loot bags that will give us powerful new accessories that will basically be skills in of themselves, I explained, and the girls nodded in understanding, with Belle already knowing what the Eye was like. So I had to explain that it was going to be a different experience with the Fargo's mod installed, and that she was to nod at any moment, stop moving. Then with an exhale of breath, I smiled wryly as I activated the suspicious Eye to summon the Eye of Cthulhu, and with a wet gurgling roar the Eye appeared in the shadows of the surrounding trees and immediately began flying in my direction while shooting the comparatively slow-moving lasers out of the center of its eye. Shit! I cursed as I grappled hooked out of the way as the lasers were moving much faster than usual, and I noticed how the Eye of Cthulhu was glowing, as no longer was it its simple form of a flying giant eye, but now it glowed with silverly green light, with several features and segments of it making it look almost ghostly, as it was looking more like an apparition of its true form belonging to the Moon Lord. And then the Eye screeched as Belle grappled hooked onto its form and began stabbing its soft ocular body with her massive sword of grass that began poisoning it, while Filvis did the same with that teardrop cleaver that reduced the boss's physical strength by half. Get off it! I roared as I saw beneath the Eye a ball of cursed green flames were growing, and the two girls, knowing I wouldn't yell for no reason, leapt from the Eye of Cthulhu just in time as the large ball of cursed green flames exploded, and the Eye of Cthulhu sat within the cursed flames as it obviously attempted to kill anyone that stopped its form. It can now make rudimentary plans and isn't just rushing after me or the most dangerous person it can sense. I thought with a frown as I resumed shooting the Eye of Cthulhu with my magna cannon, and then switching to my platinum crossbow to shoot poison and fire arrows at the Eye of Cthulhu at a distance, as I kept it primarily locked onto me. With a screech of fury at being denied hurting either of the two girls, the Eye of Cthulhu then blazed with more eerily ghost-like energy, and I wanted to teleport home, as forming out of the powerful energy surrounding the Eye of Cthulhu were dozens. No, literally more than a couple hundred basketball-sized flying lesser eyes that began flying at us all at great speed. But as the Eye of Cthulhu screeched and blared its energy so carelessly, I staggered as the dungeon itself shook and the ceiling shattered as an even louder roar of primal fury rang out. Oh, this is fucking bullshit. I cursed as I realized that although the gods didn't either notice or care about the hints of divinity in the Eye of Cthulhu, this far more blatant outpouring of divinity within this version was spitting in the eye of the dungeon as its cursed flames burnt down the surrounding forests and hurt the dungeon while slapping its corrupted divinity in the face of the dungeon. From the shattered ceiling of the dungeon hung a large 70-odd meter giant that fell to the ground of the floors of Riviera with a massive crashing noise that shook the dungeon, and then, to make it even better, the bright crystals above us turned red with the floor, turning our surroundings much darker, with the dungeon going essentially on lockdown as the giant got to its feet. Even the Eye of Cthulhu stopped chasing me as it sensed the sheer malevolence coming off the Goliath, and then it floated up in the air with its army of lesser eyes arrayed around it as the monster Rexes met each other in a silence that weighed like gods weighed upon the people within Riviera, as everyone wondered if the dungeon Goliath would attempt to work with the Eye of Cthulhu to kill everyone on the floor. But shattering the moment of tranquility, the massive black-enhanced Goliath, with a swiftness that far exceeded its massive size, swiped its massive hands at the flying Eye of Cthulhu, but were, instead of meeting the soft flesh of the eye, instead phased through it as the Eye of Cthulhu phased out of reality, so its hands passed through it, and as soon as it did, the Goliath had a deluge of green cursed flames sprayed into its face as the hundreds of lesser eyes began tearing chunks off the boss as they morphed into their flying mouth form.